We have with us today a very special guest, Mr. Rajvardhan Sinha, Additional Commissioner of Police, Economic Offence Wing, Mumbai Police. Mr. Sinha, firstly, thanks for sparing this time to ET Now, one of your rarest television interviews I know. So, to begin with, on the whole NSCL scam, which you have been looking at very closely for the last 3 months now, finally the charge sheet has been filed in this case. If I could ask you, from your past experiences, how difficult this case for you or your team to crack, or was it a straitjacket case where all violations had happened blatantly and were flouted by the management?
EOW Mumbai has filed the first charge sheet and taken over the investigation further. It is not the completion of the case yet. And as far as the difficulty or you can say the complexity of the case is concerned, for us, the very understanding of the process of how the spot exchange worked was something which was difficult to begin with. But once we understood the process, how it functioned, thereafter to investigate this case, it was not very difficult because most of the economic offences are document based, and in this we found out that many of the things were not existing in the very first place, like the godowns were not existing, goods were not there, and simultaneously many of the things which had to be in place were not in place. So, the evidences together were not very difficult.
So, if I could ask you now, with the charge sheet being filed, where does this case go from now on? Would, in that sense, brokers will be your next target on how they, what was their role in this whole scheme of things?
As I had been saying from the very beginning, that the first and the foremost task in the investigation was to secure the money flow and secure the assets. And as you are aware, that of the 5,600 crore worth of loss in this particular case, roughly around 4,300 crore worth of assets have been frozen by now, and we are further probing the money flow. And the second aspect in this investigation now is the conspiracy aspect and the role of other uh, players like the brokers and the directors and other people who were involved. So, EOW Mumbai now is going to probe the role of the brokers and also the role of the promoters and directors.
So, if I could ask you in that sense, although as you, all these people, the promoters, directors, brokers, are part of your FIR. Now, just for the understanding of the investors or viewers at large, now since they have been named as accused in the FIR and not been charge sheeted, does it mean that these people have been let off the hook?
Definitely not. We have charge sheeted in the first charge sheet the people who are already arrested and who have not yet been given bail. The subsequent charge sheets will definitely probe the role of the people who have been named in the FIR, and as and when the enough evidences are collected, the charge sheet will have their name as well.
So I know I would not, you would not like to go into the merits because this is the ongoing investigations. But at the face of it, till now, whatever evidence you have gathered, the investigations that you have done, what does it look like? Brokers clearly somewhere down the line were knowing what was happening and they were doing the business after that.
Even if you go by the Grant Thornton report, even they state that they have found in some places the PowerPoint presentations where some of the brokers were promoting it as a clear investment scheme rather than as a spot exchange. So, going by that, even if it is very apparent that some of the brokers were aware that what kind of scheme it is and what was behind the entire screen and what was appearing. So, it will not be out of place for me to say that definitely some of the brokers were promoting it as an investment scheme, and we are going to investigate that aspect as well.
Okay. So now going to the other aspects of the case, there have also been concerns raised on the whole software, particularly of the parent company, that is FT. Now the larger worry for the capital markets is this software is being used largely by many players in the capital markets, at the same time by MCX as an exchange, MCX SX as an exchange. So what is your investigation trail leading when it comes to the software of FT?
See, we are still investigating the different aspects of the software. Grant Thornton report has also made some comments about the software, but more is regarding the hardware aspect of the software rather than the software per se. Like for instance, the various connectivity of the hardwares. there were certain areas where manual interventions were allowed, especially in the hardware structure of this particular exchange, which allowed the intervention manually as and when it was required, which was a cause of concern. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the entire uh, industry is at threat, but this aspect needs investigation and it will definitely be investigated.
So if I could ask you, down the line somewhere, do you felt during the investigations that maybe FMC as a regulator could have been much more alert, things would have not come to this stage what it is at this point of time?
See, I will not be able to comment on this because, as you are aware, that NSCL at since inception was not under the regulatory framework of FMC, and FMC has also made it very clear that since it was not under the regulatory framework of FMC since inception, so they were not in a position to regulate it.
Okay. So now coming back, till now we have seen some almost 5 arrests, 3 of the former suspended NSCL employees and 2 of the borrowers. In the scheme of things, I'm sure you would not like to divulge your strategy, but also the question being asked is, has the big fish been let off in this whole case, particularly the promoter and some of the board of directors?
Your question will be more relevant when EOW will had EOW filed its final charge sheet. As I have told you, we have just filed our first charge sheet. Investigation is still in progress. So it will not be proper for me to give any detail how the investigation will progress at this moment.
Okay. So if I could just ask you more importantly, with the type of experience that you have coming with and the type of various economic cases that you have been handling in the last 1 year, also doesn't perceptions at time important? The perception that generally everyone is feeling that although the assets must have been securitized, but maybe the brain behind this is still freely walking. That is the perception primarily that the investors or everyone at large is having.
In economic offences, the most important issue is to secure the loss, and the loss here is mostly in terms of money, and thereafter to ensure that the people, the conspirators who are behind it, are booked properly and they are not again allowed to perpetrate the kind of crime they have committed. And the investigating agencies are committed to do that, and I can assure you that even in this case the due process will be followed.
That's a very important aspect coming from you, sir, as a head of EOW, that none of the culprits in this particular case would be spared. It's just a matter of time or a procedure that you're and a strategy that you're sticking to.
Definitely.
Okay. And so, if I could ask you at a macro level, now you have been heading this wing for a while, and under you, we have seen various high profile cases being cracked by you and your team. How has, say, last 3 years been for your team with high profile cases like Limousine, QNet, Speak Asia, now NSCL, although NSCL will be the biggest in terms of value, but how has been your experience generally in handling this economic activities or economic frauds, if I could tell?
See, in economic offences, we are finding that in many cases, the online frauds where the servers are located in some other country, or you can say the transnational sphere of these kind of frauds, are making it difficult for law enforcement agencies to control them. And also in many cases, the greed of getting easy money are making people fall prey to such kind of crimes. And in also certain cases, there are temptations of getting quick buck, getting rich quickly. These are kind of aspects with lack of awareness in remote areas about what is correct and what is not so correct. These kind of issues make uh, these kind of crimes grow faster, and I feel that in future also these kind of crimes are going to increase. The only answer is that we have to educate people. The people have to understand that greed is not always the way to grow and to become rich faster.
So, if I could ask you, can you put a cumulative value, say at least in 2013, what would be the amount of cases that you have cracked or the assets that you must have recovered from various cases, which in turn would go to the investors, of course?
See, if you take the past 3 years, the value cumulative figure is roughly around 15,000 crores. In 2013 alone, the figure stands at around 9,000 crores. So that is the amount, the kind of amount that EOW Mumbai has investigated.
Okay. So if I could ask you, the one thing that investors want to know now, the charge sheet is filed, it's an MPID court. How soon or what would be a realistic time frame where investors could expect their money to come into their account after all the procedures are completed in the court?
It all depends upon the honorable court, that how the court views it and how soon the liquidation of the asset starts. For me, it will not be proper to comment on that aspect.
Okay. So if I could finally ask you, in terms of your experiences, particularly the NSCL, as you have been saying, this is one of the biggest in terms of value. What are the two big learnings, and what is that can be done at a systemic level to avoid such lapses?
See, oversight or regulatory framework is always essential when public money is involved and when large number of investors are involved, and the faith of the people is paramount, and it is always restored when there are regulatory framework who is looking into these kind of systems. That I must say has to be there always. And apart from that, I can also say that people should realize that any return which is there can never exceed the return which can come from normal market channels like share market or other exchanges. If somebody is promising something which is extraordinary, then red bulb should blink and one should understand there is something extraordinarily wrong with it, and one should make oneself double sure before investing one's hard-earned money.
Before I could just wrap up, I could just touch upon this particular aspect. Now, with brokers being scrutinized so closely, do we see also some sort of coordination between you and market regulator SEBI, who primarily regulates the broking community?
If we found anything extraordinarily wrong, or if there is some ethical lapses on the part of the broker apart from criminal lapses, we are duty bound and we will definitely be informing the regulators to take regulatory action as and when required.
Okay, and so finally, any investor of NSCL who's listening to this interview, they have been in touch and been meeting you at regular intervals. What is that you would like to tell them? Because as I may sound repetitive, the fear is maybe the main culprit will not get booked, and maybe their only hope is that the monies will get recovered because of the assets that have been securitized. What is that you would like to tell the investors?
I can assure all the investors and all the people that law of the land will be upheld, and no culprit, whosoever he or she may be, will be left scot-free. The law of the land will prevail.
So now once again, thanks for sparing this time. It was a pleasure talking to you, sir.
Thank you.